Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Poe, and today I want to talk about some books that did not work out so well for me this year. The other week I had asked people for some feedback on whether or not I should be including DNFs in my weekly wrap-ups or did not finish books. I got some really great feedback with some very strong points about why it's helpful to include those, mainly that it provides a more holistic review, not just of people who finished the book, but also people who just stopped part way and why they didn't like it. Also, some people mentioned that it's really helpful to have information if there are tropes or issues or triggers that could be problematic for them, such that they may not even want to start the book. So I thought those were really strong points. So I will be including DNFs in my wrap-ups at the end of them each week if I have anything that I've DNF'd, but I thought it would also be a good idea to go back to the beginning of this year and talk about all of the books up until this point that I have decided to put down for one reason or another. So I'm going to split this into DNFs, which are books that I did not finish and will not be returning to, and something that I'm going to call an NFN, which is a not for now. So a book that I started reading, decided this is not working for me right now, but I'm open to coming back to in the future. So I'll talk about all of the books so far this year that have been DNFs or NFNs. So first, let's talk about my DNFs. Many of these I'm just going based off of memory. I don't necessarily have notes. I don't exactly know the true percentage that I DNF'd many of these at, but I am going to do my best as far as my memory allows me to. So first, I DNF'd 11/22/63 by Stephen King. This is basically a time travel novel where a man goes back to the 60s and is trying to stop the assassination of JFK. This book is something that I got about 50% through before DNFing, but I found that although the writing was fine, I was just getting really annoyed with the representation of the 60s. So this white middle-aged man from the present goes back to the past, and it sort of glorifies the 60s, talking about just, how much more alive he feels, how much better the food is and the music and all of these things. And it makes a couple of references every once in a while, acknowledging that, oh yeah, also maybe it's a little sexist at this time, and oh yeah, maybe there's a little bit of racism, but man, life is so much more full and better, and this guy is kind of living the dream. So that just really got on my nerves. It just felt like a white guy's fantasy of reliving the good old golden days. And I have heard from somebody else who has finished the book that actually it does turn around at the end. So I'm not saying that this is necessarily a bad book, but I was just getting very annoyed with it, and I was not interested in reading more of the narrative. Next, I DNF'd This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Mohtar and Max Gladstone. This is a little novella that is kind of told almost in epistolary form, where there are two time-traveling agents who are working for opposing companies, and they keep going back in time and also to kind of other worlds, dimensions type of thing, and messing with things there to try to make the timeline go more according to their company's wishes. And so they're kind of opposing each other, but they end up connecting with each other through these attacks. And this is something that the premise was really cool, but it just didn't work out for me. So I DNF'd this at 30%. I have heard other people say, by the way, that it gets much better after the 30% mark, so maybe I should have stuck with it. But basically, I just got bored. This wasn't an awful book by any means, but I just wasn't that into it. And it's a little bit of a stylized writing style, which is fine, but I think it's the sort of thing that I wasn't really feeling engaged. Especially, I did not really love the letters between the characters. So the format of the book is sort of, you'd have a scene, and I liked the scenes, and then you'd have a letter. And the letters had a little bit of kind of humor to them that just didn't jive with my sense of humor. I find humor in books is very, very hit or miss for me, and this one was just kind of missing, and I just wasn't into it, so I stopped reading it. Next, I DNF'd Slay by Brittney Morris. This is a YA contemporary with a lot of social justice themes where a Black teenage girl creates an online game where lots of people join and play, and it's all centered around Blackness. But at some point, some of the characters come to an altercation in real life, which prompts a lot of kind of media storm around this, and there's a lot of discussion of the way that the media and society in general kind of views Blackness. So I went into this really, really excited, but then I ended up DNFing it at 20%. YA is always something that's a little touch and go for me, where I can like YA, but I can also get annoyed pretty easily by YA. And this one ended up just kind of annoying me. Basically, I found that I was getting really nitpicky about things. A lot of this is dealing with social justice issues, but some of it just felt very heavy-handed and sometimes contradictory. So the main character, when we're introduced to her, the whole reason that she's created this online space for Black players is because she lives in like this predominantly white neighborhood, and she feels like she constantly has to deal with a non-Black culture and all of these people kind of pressuring her and asking her questions, just trying to justify herself almost. But then the book itself is kind of justifying Blackness. It's constantly explaining and constantly justifying it. Just like that was a weird thing for me. There were also just some inconsistencies that kind of got under my skin. Just things like this online world is something that people from all over the world are playing, but it's the viewpoint of the main character is often very American-centric. Things like, oh, I bet a lot of people are rushing home from school like I am to go play this. But I mean, it's the whole world, so you've got all these different time zones. So it just felt very kind of only token representative of the other places. And so there were just little things like that that got on my nerves, but there was nothing really bad about this. And I can totally see why it's a really meaningful book and really cool, especially for anybody who just loves YA. But for me, I just ended up getting annoyed, and so I put it down. The next book that I DNF'd was Long Shot by Kennedy Ryan. This is a romance novel that tackles a lot of issues of domestic abuse. And this is something that I went into kind of expecting to get a lot out of, because I do really love romance, and I like romance that tackles kind of interesting issues. However, this one very, very much did not work for me. I DNF'd it at, I think, 40%, and that was probably much too long because I got very upset with this book. So basically, there's a couple of main issues in this book for me. The first was that it was very, very graphic. This talks about a woman involved in an abusive relationship, and then there's another male who is somebody who we know is going to later become her true, love match type of thing. But the abusive relationship scenes are so graphic, so violent, so just upsetting that I'm somebody who can't handle violence on the best of days, and to see it in a romance novel, it was just so difficult to read. Another issue that I had with this was that the plot became very much soap opera-y. I just always struggle with anything that feels over the top or that feels overly dramatic, and it's not that domestic abuse is not something that deserves kind of drama. It is something that is very traumatizing in a lot of ways, but it felt like that was cheapened by the kind of soap opera nature of just kind of things that seemed very unrealistic, things that seemed over the top, and that really drew me out of the story, and I had a hard time with it. And then the thing that was really just not gonna work for me at all was that the other love interest, the person who was supposed to be the good guy who later on will come and will have a happily ever after, I did not find him good. I found him so problematic. So the abusive guy is somebody who is just so overly controlling and so abusive, and the good guy was also controlling. So to a less extreme degree, but there were so many times when I felt like he really did not listen. There were major issues with consent. There were just so many things that I could not get behind this guy either. And so in a romance novel, you have to be behind the pairing, and I was not. So I DNF'd this, and I definitely will not come back to it. Next, I DNF'd Everything is Made of Letters by Sofia Rhei. So this is a collection of translated short stories that I should have loved because it's all about linguistics in kind of science fiction stories. However, I ended up DNFing this at 30% because there were some things that probably just for me were very problematic in terms of the way that language was portrayed. So since my background is in linguistics, I have very strong opinions about the way that language is portrayed. And this story took a very prescriptivist view, which is sort of when you say, this is the correct way that language should be, rather than a descriptivist view, which is kind of like, this is how we see language acting. Prescriptivist views are often tied to issues of elitism and class. And so these stories had that viewpoint, and it really got under my skin, just this sort of acting as if language were something that had a correct form, and not recognizing that that is a form of elitism and classism. And so that kind of got to me, and I wasn't interested in continuing. Next, I DNF'd Homie by Danez. This is a poetry collection by a poet who I have liked his previous work. Danez has a collection called Don't Call Us Dead, which I thought was so good. So I was excited to read this new collection, but I ended up DNFing it at 30%. And I think the issue with this is that I am very much not the intended audience. The intended audience of this is Black men. And that is not me. And I couldn't connect with the poems, as well as there was a lot of explicit violence and profanity and these sorts of things that I just really don't get along with in these poems. So this is something that could work for other people, but clearly I was not the intended audience, and that's okay. So I stopped reading it. Now moving on to my NFNs, or not for nows. These are the books that I tried and just was not in the mood and put down, but I might come back to at some other point. First is Before We Were Yours by Lisa Wingate. This is a literary fiction, I think, that is based on some real historical events, where basically children from some poor families were stolen and sold to rich families who couldn't have children and wanted some. So it kind of follows this historical timeline when that's happening, as well as a more modern day when the descendants of those children who were stolen are kind of learning about that past. This is something that I DNF'd at 10%. I am not entirely sure if it was not working for me because I got sick right around the time that I DNF'd it and just was totally out of it, or if kind of the story itself wasn't working for me. I do remember that the voice of it was a little bit strong. It had a very southern kind of dialect, and sometimes that felt a little overpowering. And also I remember that it was just a little bit uncomfortable to read this. I had just read many other things talking about a lot of different social justice issues, and it felt weird that this one was talking about something that was bad, but basically the victims were children who grew up in lives of luxury. And so it just didn't have the gravitas that I think it was meant to have. So I put it down, and I might come back to it at some other point, but definitely at that point, at least, it was not working for me. Next is A Princess in Theory by Alyssa Cole. This is a contemporary romance where a woman who has basically been through the foster system discovers that actually, as a child, she was from Africa and had been engaged to a prince there. And the prince has been trying to find her, but she's, living her own life. She doesn't realize that this is anything beyond just an email scam. And he finds her, but decides to pretend to be just a normal person, so that he can get to know her. So very much a Coming to America style of story. So this is something that I ended up DNFing also at 10%, where I loved the idea of it and I'd heard really good things about it, but it was not working for me when I picked this up. It had a sense of humor that was really not working for me. And I'm not sure if that's something that was just me at the time, or if that humor style is just not gonna work for me in general. I'm very picky about humor. I especially also didn't like that it felt a little over the top and silly sometimes, where, you know, the prince was kind of this almost caricature of a prince, where he was just, you know, like, of course my servants will do these things for me. Oh, but I am pretending to be a servant myself. Oh, but I don't know what to do. It was just like silly. And that's something that maybe at another point will work for me, but when I was reading it, really did not. And my last NFN is The Cereal Garden by Joan Aiken. So this is a collection of short stories that are kind of surrealist, absurdist humor, written, I believe, maybe in the 50s, something around there, about a family where kind of wacky things happen, unicorns appear, that sort of thing, following especially the children in the family. And I ended up DNFing this at 10%, not because I wasn't exactly liking it, but more just because I wasn't in the mood. So I picked this up just a couple of weeks ago when everything was so stressful, and I just couldn't read any of the things that I actually had on hand. But this was available immediately on my library's ebook copy, and I thought, let me try this. And I tried it, and it was okay, but it just wasn't what I was looking for at the moment. So I thought that it was cute, but it just didn't grip me. So I'm not against coming back to this at some point in the future. It just wasn't something that I felt like continuing at that point. Okay, so those are all of the books that I have DNF'd or NFN'd so far this year that are not included in my weekly wrap-ups. Going forward, I'll just include them in my weekly wrap-ups, but I did want to kind of catch up until now. It's very interesting to kind of look at the patterns. Things like, for example, I tend to NFN at 10%. That's apparently how long I need to know that I'm not in the mood for the book. And DNFs tend to take me a little bit longer. It looks like a lot of them are around like 30 or 40%. And it seems like I tend to DNF either because there's some content that really doesn't work for me, like violence, or because something about it is kind of rubbing me the wrong way, like the humor style doesn't work, or I find the characters annoying, or there's some sort of soap opera plot. So these are the sorts of reasons that I tend to DNF, or just maybe I'm not engaged in the story. That is also perfectly fine as a reason for me to DNF. So I looked at it and it looks like I've DNF'd books where I've read total about 900 pages so far this year. So about 900 pages of DNFs. It's interesting. It's not so much, truthfully, so that's okay. And yeah, I would just like to know about you guys as well. If you have read any of these books that I have DNF'd or NFN'd, or if you guys want to share what books that you've kind of DNF'd or NFN'd, I'd love to hear about that. So go ahead and leave me a comment down below.